Hello, everybody. Gail Craft here from the Empowering Process podcast. And I have with me, and I'm going to use the name that I call her by, Chewy. And it's really Chua. Maybe it's Chewy,
Sure.
but I like Chewy, like Chewbacca. And she's like Chewbacca, little Chewbacca, right? And she is a dear friend, a comrade, and a recent author about her experience with not only finding her soulmate and losing her soulmate, but in the process of that mourning, that healing, that experience has evolved to another level that she never thought even existed with his help. So, welcome, Chewy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gail, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to, be able to talk about this. This is actually the first time that I am talking it aloud without, reading it from my book.
Right. So, the title of the book is Where the End Begins.
Yes.
And so, tell me about the title, choosing the title.
Yeah. So I chose the title. At first, when I started writing, I wasn't sure what I was going to name this memoir. I didn't know it was going to be a memoir at all, actually. But as I'm writing, I realized that it where the end begins is not about the end of his passing. It's not about death. It's about that space between transitioning, I guess you can call it. It actually came from a quote that I read. Um, Maybe where the end begins and echoes, where your world is me and my world is you. And I read that and it just resonated with me so deeply because I saw myself in this celestial world where my husband and I were together and we were having this conversation. And so where the end began became the title of my book because through my process, my husband and I, we had multiple conversation in this celestial space, whether it was in a dream or in meditation, and that became part of my spiritual awakening, which I, like you said, I didn't know I was going through that. I initially thought, I'm just grieving. This is normal. I'm sure everyone who lost someone who meant so much to them probably felt or heard some sort of voice. Maybe they're grieving. This is the first time I've lost someone who meant so much to me. So maybe it's normal. And so my logical mind, it's saying you're just grieving. There's not really anything there. And I'm trying to find all the scientific reasons why things are happening.
So let's stop there.
Yeah,
Chewy is very analytical.
I am.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Has to find the reasoning behind everything.
Yes.
Right. So she's looking for the logic in the illogical.
Yes. I
So go
was.
ahead. I
Yeah,
just think
and
that's
I think
beautiful.
that comes with, years of being in the technology field and being project manager. We're built to analyze everything, and so that was still my head was, trying to analyze everything. But I got to a point where there was no logical answer. There was no logical answer. And I couldn't deny what I was feeling and what I was seeing. Um and that became a part of my writing too as I'm writing. When I started writing, the only purpose was to capture memories so that I don't forget them. Um, and then these capture memories became a part of the process of me almost going back in time and reliving these moments. And then as I'm writing, I'm getting all these feels from my husband and then my spirit guides as well, which I never knew existed. Who uh, came to me and started introducing themselves one by one. And at first I'm like, oh, what is going on? Like what is going on? And I remember specifically one of my main spirit guides. She had long white flowy hair with very translucent skin, very tall, but youthful looking. And she would calm me through each one, and she just like, stay calm. Because I was like, oh, what's going on? She's like, be calm. And as soon as she said that, I felt calm. And she's like, this is your spiritual awakening. Or she's like, if I'm seeing things that I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to be seeing that. She's like, be calm, your third eye has opened, So I'm like, this is so strange. And so that's when I started reaching out to others who've had similar experience. And
So let me share a recent story with you.
yeah.
And this is really parents and adoptive parents. This is an adopted parent. If you do not believe that the child you are raising was meant to be, this is the story. I
Yes.
have a friend who has a child she adopted. He's now 5, I think.
Mhm.
And last night he said to her, I chose you. I tried to come, but you were closed. So I
Yeah,
went to someone else
I
and you
believe that.
found me,
I believe that.
right?
Yeah, I believe that simply because of my own son. Um, my son was born with memories of past lives. He was 2 to 3 years old, and he started telling me stories. And at that age, I'm thinking, kids, that this child has such an active imagination, and he would always talk about my dad long time ago or my best friend long time ago. But at that age, long time ago probably meant last week. So he probably talking about a memory he had with his dad last week. Until one day um we were sitting together around the kitchen table, and he started talking about his best friend. He's like, Mom, my best friend was blind. I'm like, I know all your best friends. They're your sister and your cousin. None of them are blind, So it's like my best friend he was blind, and he died. So my dad long time ago helped me dig a hole, and we buried him. I'm like, and the hair on my arm just stood up, and I'm like, Kyle, um, do you mean your dad right there? Pointing to his dad sitting on the couch. He's like, no, Mom, a different dad, long time ago. And that's when it clicked. It's like, oh my gosh, all this time he's been telling his stories about long time ago. He's not talking about now, you know. And then when he got older, I asked him a similar question about adoption, because he found out one of his friends was adopted. And I said to him, Kyle, how would you feel if I told you you were adopted? He started thinking. He's like, would you still be my mom if I was adopted? And I was like, yeah, I'll still be your mom. It's like, okay, that's all that matters, because I chose you to be my mom 5 lifetimes. And he's like, this is the fifth, you know? And so what you said, what you shared reminded me of that,
Right,
they choose us, and whether it's through adoption or through birth, there's a purpose for everything.
right, right. And the purpose, I'm learning a lesson through my experience with my daughter. I'm learning a lesson through my experience with my son. It's not about them and me raising them, right? It's about my growth through that experience. One of the things the universe has been very clear with me is that your job ended when they became emancipated, and anything after that is none of your business. As a parent, that was very difficult to
Yes.
take, right? But it's true. And so I've learned, and it was not an easy lesson to not give my perspective, because I don't when I coach anyone, because it's none of, I might say, well, if I were in that position, here's how I would handle it. But that's not me. So let's talk about you,
Yeah.
right? Or, what are your words? What is your language? Because my language is completely different. And so even when I'm asked for advice now, I ask questions, right? because we are all on our own journey. So your husband's passing, he probably came knowing that he wasn't going to be here for very long, right?
Yeah.
And that part of his job was to awaken you,
Yes.
right? So let's talk about your love story. That
Yeah.
is um, so amazing to me because I know your first marriage was not a love story,
No.
and one that you tried to make work
Yes.
and finally realized no, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And you left beautiful San Diego. And why did you leave and what happened?
Yeah. Because after my divorce, I talked to you about it a bit at the time too. I had been married for a long time, dedicating my whole life or the life of my marriage to this marriage to try to make it work. And I remember you asked me a simple question. It was a very simple question after my divorce, like, what do you want? I don't know what I want. You said list like 50 things I want, and I can't even list 10, you know. And but then from that moment, I dedicated myself to uh, finding the things that I want. And I thought, okay, I want to be closer to family. I want to feel connected, you know. So that's why I left San Diego to be closer to family. I moved back to my hometown, and then I realized I wasn't happy. Like no matter where I went, I didn't feel like I was home. I felt like something was missing. And so I thought, okay, my parents are retired now and they live in Minnesota and let me move there. Maybe being closer to my parents would feel more like home. So I moved to Minnesota and within days of moving here, I met my husband. And and I don't know if it was because I was so in love with him that I felt at home. For some reason, the moment I met him, there was just this instant feeling like there's something familiar about this. But then I thought, oh, he's good looking. He's probably a heartbreaker. Now stay away, you know. And so, but for some reason he felt a connection too, and he just kept calling and he wanted to get together. So we did, and we realized that wow, we're so much alike. And from the day that we um got together to the day that he passed, we spent every day together, getting to know each other and feeling connected with one another, feeling and realizing that, there are things that we understood without being said. And we didn't really know why. And, um, and we had, 4.5 wonderful years together. And then he passed away. And um, after he passed away, it was it was the hardest thing to accept. I mean, even as I'm going through all this, and even today, I still feel like this can't be our life. There should be more. But to what you said earlier, um, throughout you know, the length of our relationship, there were times when he said, I don't think I'm going to see retirement, because we talked about each other's life and he was 48 when he passed. And so we were both in our 40s. And I asked him, you've always lived here in Minnesota, why haven't you like really settled down? Because he just really loved that nomadic life of just being able to pick up and go wherever he wants. And he would always say, because I don't think I'm going to live to be that old. And I'm like, don't say stuff like that. And I was just telling, don't say that, don't believe that. And then he passed away, and thinking back, I'm like, I think he knew, somehow his soul knew. Um, and that's what you said. In order for him to pass to awaken me, he came back to me in a dream too. And said, in order for you to grow this spiritual side of you, I have to be here because we're twin souls. We are connected. And while you're doing your spiritual work there on earth, I'm doing the spiritual work here. We're connected, you know. And I cried. I remember crying when he said that to me. And I'm like, I don't want any of this. I don't want any of the spiritual stuff. I don't need it. I just need you back here. And, you know, and he would always say, because I don't think I'm going to live to be that old. And I'm like, don't say stuff like that. And it took me a while through my grieving, and that's one of the things that I think I didn't write that part in the book, but that's one of the things that got me through this whole grieving, is because I had a lot of people who loved me, who reached out, and they want to comfort me, they want to say things that would make me feel better, but in my mind, all I kept thinking is the only thing that would make me feel better, and the only way that I would feel better is if my husband's here, if I'm hearing things from him, and I did. Um, and as if just being my dream wasn't enough, he was messing with my electronics, my phone, playing music at random times. He would send me messages on my cell phone that never came through, but I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it and I'm recording the screen to make sure I'm not seeing things. And it looks like he's typing me a message. But as soon as the message stops, I hear his voice and he tells me his message. And I'm like, am I hearing this because I want to hear it, or am I hearing this because he's actually talking to me? And it wasn't until I met my spiritual coach, because I was trying to make sense of what I was going through, and she put things into perspective for me. And I at first I thought, okay, well, what you're saying is overwhelming. It's a lot. It's kind of crazy for me right now, but then it can't be more crazy than me hearing things and seeing things. So,
I was always taking a walk one time, and I connect a lot when I take a walk.
mhm.
And I was receiving downloads and messages, and I said, "Is that you or is that me?"
Yeah,
And what I heard was, "Does it really matter?"
yeah,
Right? And it doesn't,
mhm.
right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, and so as I'm writing my book, or just writing down my memories, um, and I remember the moment I decided, it took me about, I think, from the time my husband passed to the time I actually decided that I was gonna turn my memories into a memoir. It's about probably 6 months. Um, and then the moment I decided, okay, I'll write my memoir, um, I started writing nonstop. It was almost as if I was possessed somehow, because I would wake up at 8 in the morning, and I would write and write until like 5:30 in the morning. Okay, I'd be stuck at my desk writing, and then I would write until I couldn't write anymore, and then because I'm just drained and I'm about to crash, I would go to bed and I would have all these dreams. And then I get up and then I start writing again from 8 all the way to 5. And I did that for a whole month. And I kept going back and rereading what I wrote. And I just thought, I have never written this much before. I mean, like, I I technical work, I mean, and stuff like that. But to actually just write, to unload everything, I really felt like I was unloading all the information that I was getting with my memories. And
So let me talk to you about the spirit guide world, because here's what happens.
yeah.
We have spirit guides that come at different points in our life and stay,
Mhm.
right? Those are our spirit guides, if you will, right? And they help us through those transitions in life that we go through. And then there are spirit guides that have a job, and the writing spirit guide is one of them.
Yes.
And so when you're ready to write, one of your spirit guides goes, "Hey, we need
Yeah.
some help here,"
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then the writing guide comes and goes,
Yeah.
right? And then when you're done, they're like, "Okay, someone else needs me. See ya."
I completely believe that, and that's exactly what happened. And that's when I started learning about my spirit guides too. And so it's like, um there are multiple spirit guides with multiple purpose. And like you said, there are some spirit guides who are here on a daily with us all the time, taking us through certain things. And that's what I'm going through. And then even the moment when I said, okay, I'm done with my book, um, my husband comes to me in a dream. Is like, okay, you need to go back and you need to focus on these chapters. One there's a particular chapter in the book that he really wanted me to focus on, and it was called the Seven Lanterns. Uh, and the reason why he wanted me to write that, because initially when I wrote that, all I said was I had this strange, vivid dream of seven lanterns, and these seven lanterns were our seven lives together. And and it was very brief. And then my husband, he's like, no, you got to go back and you got to write out each chapter, I mean, or each lantern. Talk about our kids in that life, talk about our life, where we lived, you know, how did it look like? How did it smell like? You know, you need to add those in. And he said that I need you to remember these seven lifetimes because I don't want you to grieve so much thinking that this is it, this life is it, that this is all we have. We had seven lifetimes together, we will have more, is what he said. And that really helped me grieve. And so I did go back and I wrote all seven chapters. So from the format to the format that I actually will publish, includes all all seven lanterns. Because I only wrote like I think in the book when you read it, I only wrote the first three really briefly, and then yeah, so I went back and I rewrote it and I added a little bit more message of what he said, and because the dreams came full circle for me. Um, and then the morning that I said, okay, I am done with my book, you know, I'm ready to seal it and send it off to the print. My spirit guide, I mean not spirit guide, my spiritual coach called me. She's like, Chua, did you just finish your book? And I was like, yeah, I did. She's like, okay, because Logan's here all excited telling me that you just finished your book. I was like, I started laughing and I was like, yes, I did. I did finish my book. I'm glad he's excited. So yeah, no, it's been quite a journey. Just writing it and at the same time being open up to this whole other side that makes me truly believe that this is not it. There's so much more out there in the universe, different realms, different universes. Um, Earth is not the only place our soul passes through. And that's one thing that I've been shown by my spirit guides.
Oh my
You know,
God, no. Oh, there's so much that we don't understand. I mean, we
yeah.
talk about the fifth dimension, and
Mhm.
that's because that is the dimension we're about ready to understand and
Yeah.
experience. But
Mhm.
there's so much more than.
There's so much more. And one thing through my um, spiritual awakening and what I've been taught by my guides is that there are many, many dimensions, many levels, 360 dimensions. And we all come from different dimensions. And Earth is just a school that we pass through. And the reason why we pass through Earth is because Earth is, of all the other realms and all the other universes out there, Earth is the youngest, least developed. Um, and at the same time, it's very complex. So we come here, we feel anger, we feel sadness, we feel jealousy, we have all these emotions, whereas other universes in other realms, we don't. There are some where we don't feel anything at all. It's all logic. And then I went on this journey, and I'm gonna kind of go off my book for a bit, which I didn't write in my book, but um, my spirit guide took me on this journey, and she said, "We're gonna take you to the very first place where you came into existence."
Okay, so that's what I do in my soul realignment. I go to your first,
Yes.
I say breath of life. When your
Yes.
soul is created, where
Hmm.
did you start? Because that's where you develop your characteristics. Tell me. Where'd you
Yeah.
go? Tell me all
So my
about it.
husband and I, we were both from this place. And that's why we're so connected. We're both from this place because we're twin souls. We were a flame that split in two, you know. And um, so I was taken to this place, and as I was traveling there, I saw just a small little light, and it got bigger and bigger, and suddenly I was there. Um, and it was made, this place was made of mostly water. So it looked like this grand ocean, but the oceans were so calm as if it was just a lake. You know, it wasn't like raging like the oceans here. And and then I saw this figure, this lady walked out of this, looked like this palace made out of seashell. It was you know, it's like glimmering and like the surface of a seashell, like a pearl. And I got there and she didn't say welcome. She instead, I mean, she didn't say welcome as if I was there for the first time. She actually said welcome back, you know. And I'm thinking, welcome back, what does she mean by that, you know? And so um and I just felt this feeling of love. Um and it was like this whole world, their their feeling was love, hope, and happiness. You know, I mean, there wasn't no anger or sadness or anything like that. And it was really, their technology was a lot more advanced than anything I've ever seen. And I just thought that is so amazing. And plus the way that they looked was different. She was very tall, very fair skin. She had feather for hair. Her face structure was slightly different. You know, it was still very humanoid because you have the head and the arms and everything, but her face looked different. Her nose looked different. She did not look human, although you know she had, you know, everything in the same places. But her arms were feathered, like she had wings, you know. And so as she did that, I looked down at myself and I had wings too. So we went and we flew around and she would just show me that, you know, this was your first life, your first breath of life, before anything else, you know.
Mhm.
And and you fought to go to Earth because of the lesson you would learn there.
It's
And
hard,
yeah,
but they're amazing. One of the folks that I did some work with, he's a very energetically, his vibration is pretty high.
mhm,
And we did some soul work, you know, his first breath of life and so forth. And then we did some other work. And as I was doing the work, I got to some chakra work, which had nothing to do with what I was doing. But I'm like, okay, right.
yeah,
And we ended up clearing that. He then says to me about a day or so later, Gail, I know my soul, but I'm not feeling that anymore.
mhm,
I'm feeling nothing. He said, but it's not in a bad way. And I said, welcome to Ascension. Because he went, I said, you know, I say to everyone, when your soul was created, and you talk about, and no one ever thinks, well, then who created the soul? Right? They're like, oh, okay. Right? Right. It's implied that that is not the one and only thing. It's implied that there's more,
yes,
right? And that some of us, my first breath of life is not even in this universe.
yeah,
It's not even in this realm,
yes,
right? And so some of us is not third dimensional,
mhm,
even
yeah,
if you will, right? And so to this experience is heavy, right? But when you understand that, you understand this life
yeah,
even more.
yes,
So in that experience, what did you learn or validate about this existence? Other than you and your husband are twin flames. And that's what a twin flame is. Not everyone's a twin flame, right? It's your one flame and you split. And so you will always, because you're really one flame,
yes.
right?
Yeah. To me, that validated that this is really a learning process being here. And I looked at my life here differently. The things that used to upset me don't upset me anymore. Um, I've learned that everything that I'm going through here is there's a purpose to it. And it's up to me to understand what that purpose is as part of my lesson. I don't fear death in the same way that I used to, where everything just goes dark. You know, now it's because now it's like this is just a step that I'm on. And, you know, when we pass, we move on to the next step. And that's one thing that my husband showed me was as I was discovering myself as a medium, um, you know, uh, I took on my husband's energy and he showed me how I felt the moment he passed. And it felt like I was submerged under water, this dark water. And he said, you know, for a moment, he couldn't breathe. That moment he took his last breath, he couldn't breathe. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. And I felt like I was submerged underwater. But then at that moment was like short, it was like a second. I came up for air. This is how I felt like the moment his soul left his body. I felt like I came out for air for the first time. And instead of breathing from my lungs, was breathing from everywhere, you know, like my fingertips, my skin where that wasn't there, you know, and there was just this light and I felt alive. Um it was, I guess you can say it was a lot like a near death experience, only I didn't die. I was just feeling what he was feeling, and it gave me a sense of relief that in his last moment he wasn't scared. He wasn't in pain, and that helped me see that there's so much more out there that we don't understand. And for those of us who are here, we take it as a lesson. Everything that comes through, you know, whether it's painful, whether it's an illness, you know, or cancer like what you're going through. And that's why I said your book is so wonderful. Because no matter what struggles we're going through, there's a gift and a lesson in each one. And it's up to us to take what lessons we can learn from that and what gift we can learn from that and continue to develop ourselves. Because I wrote in my book a conversation my husband and I had, because I he had passed already. I'm sorry, my neighbor's dog. I He had passed already, and I was asking him about heaven, and he came back to me in a dream, and he said that heaven is beautiful, where our soul is constantly developing, not just on earth, but you know, when we pass into the spirit realm or to the next dimension, um, we are still developing as we prepare for the next life, you know.
That's the expansion.
Yeah.
Right. And that is perpetual motion and perpetual growth.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is my belief. So just saying, guys, I believe that when we transition, right, that is not an end. It is, this story is done.
Yeah.
And we have the opportunity to take what we've learned here and bring it.
Yeah.
Right. And share it. I had a dear friend of mine who does amazing Akashic work. And we did a reading for me, which I thought was hilarious because everything she told me I already knew. Right. But we do this stuff for confirmation, guys. Right.
Yeah.
And so she's like, so I'm a mission realmer, which I didn't tell her, but she picked that up, which means I'm here for a purpose. And that purpose is I'm here to communicate what I'm experiencing. Right.
Yeah.
And she says, you know, most souls who are here for that purpose kind of gather that information. And when you transition, you like dump it here. You're not doing that. You're like, oh, here's what's going on. And you're getting, okay, go get this. And you're like, okay, here's what's going on. Right. And I'm like, when I visualize me having this communication, it's like energy, arms holding each other. And that's how we're communicating.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not this way,
Right.
which is why when I get the downloads, they're vibrations. And now I have to translate them. I have to make them a picture, then I have to make them words. And by the time it's not the same.
Right. Right.
Right. We just do the best that we can, taking this amazing realm of knowledge and bringing it into this dimension, which is so limited, but it's
Yeah.
in those limitations that we grow.
Yeah. And the thing is that the most basic vibration gives energy. At least that's how I feel. The most basic vibration is energy. And when I went through my spiritual awakening, my whole body was vibrating. And I'm like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? And then at first I thought it was vertigo, but it's like I've had vertigo before and it doesn't feel like this. The room is not spinning. I just feel this high frequency. And I was talking to my spiritual coach. It's like, I don't know what I'm feeling. She's just like, I sense your energy. It's a lot higher than when I first met you. And then even as I discovered myself as a medium, um, I would have people ask me questions like, "Oh, well, can you communicate with, my loved one?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could." And then as soon as I say I don't know if I could, I was like, "Oh, wait, never mind. Your loved one's right here." And I was like, "Loved one's right here," and I see, she's telling me things, and it's like I don't hear it, but I feel it. I feel her emotion. I feel what she's trying to say, and then it's like you said, interpret that into words that would actually make sense to the person I'm talking to. And I would be shown things of what their loved one did or is doing now, and so I would interpret that. And it's amazing when they said, yes, that's exactly her, that's exactly my grandma, or that's exactly my grandpa, and here I am going through this. I'm shocked. I'm like, I don't know what I just did, but I'm just telling you what I just saw,
You're just receiving.
Yeah.
Um, I did an interview with a gentleman who is a channeler, right?
Mhm.
And not on, we might have said this on the air, but beforehand, he said, sometimes I'm off. Sometimes I'm not picking up.
Yeah.
He said, so I don't promise anything. I just say, well, let's see where we go,
Yeah.
right? Um, when I am guiding someone, I'll record the session. Why? Because sometimes I have no idea what's coming out of my mouth,
Mhm.
right? And I'll have clients say, "What did you just say?" And I honestly, in the meetings that I was telling you about, this happens. I'll be like, "I have no idea. Why? What did I say?" Right? Um, we all have this ability,
Yeah.
right? We're just programmed not to believe that this is truth,
Right. Right.
right? For those who are curious and start to ask questions, the truth reveals itself,
Yes.
right? Sometimes through a traumatic event. And sometimes, even though I thought I was pretty connected, sometimes it's through a traumatic feeling,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's through a health experience. Mine, I knew what the purpose of that experience was. I just also knew I needed to choose how I was going to walk down this path. So just to let you know, Chewy, every once in a while you freeze, and that could be me, that could be you, but that's okay. Your voice doesn't freeze, and that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Looks like I kind of lost you there for a bit. Looks like there's some issue with internet connection, but
Right. Okay.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. On the last thing I heard was that sometimes through traumatic events, it triggers things or it awakens certain things.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I there was a moment when after my husband passed. This is just actually just only 2-3 months ago. 2-3 months ago, I was picking up lunch for me, and my son, and I remember standing there waiting for my food, and I felt like I don't belong here on Earth, and for the first time, like I belong somewhere else, and and as soon as I thought that, I heard my spirit guide, and she said, "This is the reason why we waited so long to awaken you." Because we didn't want to interfere with your human experience because you wanted to be here on Earth so badly. You fought to be here. Um, that and you said not to interfere. that I specifically asked them not to interfere with um, my life because I wanted to be human and to go through the emotion and, just a life of an ordinary human. And it wasn't until my husband passed that I started getting all these downloads because he's connected to me. So what he sees, what he feels, I feel. And that's what really awakened me. And so that's why he had to go for me to awaken, because there's a purpose that's coming up, and I'm still learning what that purpose is.
Yes, there's something going on right now, and a lot of us have a role, different roles to play in the change that is coming right now. Um, it's time to choose. Time to choose. I recall as a child walking down the streets of Boston thinking, these are not my parents.
Yeah.
This is not my home. This is not where I belong. And having a bit of a panic attack because I knew there was no place on
Mhm.
this earth
Yeah.
that I belonged.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are some other things that happened that I was like, what does all of this mean?
Hmm.
And shutting it down because there was no one that could answer that for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I shut those questions down, but they keep popping up in certain phases of my life until finally I stopped shutting it down.
Yeah. No,
Right.
and you speaking about being a child, I went through something similar too, growing up. Because my mom, she's a shaman. My mom's a shaman, she's a healer, and I never felt connected to shamanism. Not that I wasn't connected, but I feel like there was more than that. There was more than that because even as a small child, I would sit, on my bed at night, just talking to the universe, talking to God, talking to the creator, and being at that age and not being introduced to Christianity or God or anything like that. I didn't really knew the word God other than what we hear on TV. But I just felt this connection, and I would always talk about how lonely I felt, even though my parents were there. My brothers and sisters were there. I was the oldest of eight, and I just felt homesick all the time, and I would cry all the time, and my parents never understood why. And after a while, I just thought, okay, I think maybe I'm just a very emotional kid, and that feeling stayed with me all the way into like my 30s, where you know when I see the sky a certain color, it makes me feel homesick, as if it reminded me of some place, that I have no idea where. But it's only when it's a certain color.
So the description of your home world
Mhm.
reminds me an awful lot of the tales of Atlantis.
Mhm.
And when we look at these stories, there is reality in
Yeah.
the stories that are told.
Yes, I believe that.
And they're not right, they're not fanciful. Now, was Atlantis on this earth? I don't think so, but I do believe Atlantis existed and
Yes.
does exist.
Yes.
Right, the same thing with Mount Olympia. Right,
Hmm.
all of the Iliad are
Yeah.
stories of the gods that are real.
Yeah, and not just from ancient Greek, but from Asian civilizations and Aztec
Right.
civilization, all of that. They're all very similar, but they are of another realm, is what I believe. It's not necessarily here. And
Right,
those, it's funny
it's
because,
people remembering.
yeah. And a year ago, if you asked me that, I'm like, yeah, that's not a topic I want to talk about.
Right.
No, that's my topic. But now it is as if a veil has been lifted, and I see and feel things differently. Um, I feel connected differently. Um, Things that bother me before doesn't bother me anymore, And sometimes I'm
Because
like,
they don't matter.
yeah. And it's like, why don't I care? And it's like, it's not that I don't care. It's just that I know it's not as important, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been it's hard to still put into words. There's no one word to describe the experience. I'm still very connected to my husband. You know, the other day, my spiritual coach was here. She's like, "Oh yeah, your husband's just downstairs talking to the dogs." It's like, yeah, he does that a lot. So he's still very much around, and we're still very connected in ways. Sometimes I still feel like all the human emotions of him not being physically here, and I still grieve and I still feel sad. Where like yesterday I went to a wedding, and I everyone's dancing, but I couldn't be there to dance with them, and that made me feel sad. So those stuff, I still feel them, but then at the same time I still feel very connected and blessed to still have that connection with them. And
and as you're talking, I'm envisioning, because you're twin flames,
mhm,
there is a potential of you eventually becoming one again,
yeah.
one flame again. I feel like you've chosen not to, though,
Mhm.
that as because you like this dance when you are together.
We do. It's funny because like he is the masculine half of my feminine, but then at the same time we're both, he has this feminine side, I have this masculine side too, because I'm very technical, very techy, very hands-on, and he's very handy. He's good with his hand. He's in construction, and he has his engineering mind,
But
and
he's
so
very creative.
yeah, and we both balance each other so well. And it's incredible because when he and I started working together, because I mean, like in my previous marriage, we couldn't even put together a dresser from IKEA without arguing. But with my husband, we built this deck together. It was the first deck that we built together after he and I started dating. And it's as if somehow we were connecting with each other telepathically. Whatever he needed, I handed to him before he asked. And wherever he needed me to be, I mean, we just worked like we were one, on his deck. And I thought, this is so weird, but then we thought nothing of it. We just thought, well, I guess we just worked really well together. And then going through the seven lanterns, I realized that we work really well together in every life, and that it's because we were twin flames. We were just connected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Left and right hand.
and I think so let's talk a little bit about love. We do need to cut this off. Um, because that has come up this past week, right? The misconception that we get raised with what love is, because we get raised dependent on our parents, right? For food, shelter, clothing. And so we build a story around that dependency
Yeah.
as that's love,
Yeah.
right? And so we think that having expectation and dependencies is what we are supposed to have.
Right.
That's love. What I've learned, what I've grown to learn, and what you've grown to experience is that that's not love.
Mm-hmm.
That love is so different than that.
It is.
What a lot of people, I think, look for is that twin flame connection.
Mm-hmm.
And twin flames is a rare thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because we think that that's a dependency, but it's not. The two of you, I'm not kidding, dance.
Yeah.
And that's not a dependency.
Yeah. It's not.
No, not
Yeah.
at all.
And it's an incredible feeling. I mean, I never knew what twin flame was until I met my husband.
Yeah.
And that dynamic that we have is completely different than any other relationship that I've had anywhere else. And the love is different. It's not like I depend on him to be here. I expect him to be a certain way. It was just is. It was just is. It was just like it was this complete harmony and balance of who we are. He was exactly who he is, and no matter what anybody said, it's like I love him the way he is, and he loved me the way I was. I mean, like there's just no word to describe it.
Yeah. Because it transcends the third dimension. It transcends this life. So let's wrap this up a little bit. though we could talk forever.
I know.
So you're here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And I believe that he's here to help you with
Yes.
that purpose.
Yes.
So, because otherwise he would have moved on.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's hanging around. And it's
Yeah.
not you holding him here.
No.
He's choosing to hang around.
Yes.
Right. And for those of you who don't believe any of this, that's fine. Shut us off. For those of you who do, this was an amazing story. So if, first of all, tell us about how to get your book. And if people wanted to know more about you, what would they do?
Yeah. So the website is windgardenbooks.com. And you can pre-order my books right now. There are only a few limited edition books, which will come with bookmarks and a candle that brings the essence of the book. And then a few other, just gift items that comes with the limited edition. And plus it has a gold seal on it versus the other one. I have a hardcover copy and a paperback copy version of the book. So that could be pre-ordered on the website windgardenbooks.com. And then I believe the Kindle version is also available for pre-order as well on Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So Choua, it's been awesome talking to you.
Awesome.
Everybody, this is fantastic. Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. If this interests you or you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll be happy to get back in touch with you. If you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, absolutely share it out. And as always, do subscribe so you know when the next episode is available. Thank you so much, Choua.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.